Yo, what's good? It's Miss Dora. We just got another new Dragon Age of Veilguard trailer, y'all, as part of the recent state of play from Sony on September 24th. Now, for that state of play, I will be making a separate video, just going over my thoughts of what was shown overall. But like I said, for this one though, I did just kind of want to give my impressions and thoughts of the recent Veilguard trailer, or on the recent Veilguard trailer, as well as a small deep dive that was uploaded shortly after, which shows in detail what build the Mage was using. So let's get into it. Spoiler alert, by the way, as there are some story events that were shown here in this trailer. First things first, I gotta say, BioWare really wanted to showcase some of the darkness and grit that's gonna be on display in this newest entry in the series, and I was impressed in that regard. Now, I'm fully aware that dark and gritty elements also extend to, you know, story and theme. I get that, and there really wasn't much story or theme shown in this trailer. While we did get some snippets of story, you know, some spoilers, it looks like BioWare is just showing bits and pieces only intentionally, right? So obviously I can't say much for how dark or gritty the game will be in terms of plot and theme entirely. I can say what was shown thus far for those elements looks promising, but again, it's gonna be a long game. However, like I said, this trailer did have plenty of that for what happened during the cutscenes, as well as just the overall locale of the Hossberg wetlands itself. It's very gloomy, it's desolate, and seemingly devoid of hope as the blight has spread its tendrils throughout the entire area. The trailer centers around a blue blighted dragon called Corius the Ice Talent. As the wardens notify our party upon arriving to this wrecked tower that Corius is holding beside, we see Taash approach to lure out the dragon themselves, and I gotta say, Taash looks so damn cool. Like, I'm serious. They were definitely the companion that I was least interested in. There's just nothing, you know, I just saw them. I was like, they're kind of low on the rung for me, right? But overall, I just gotta say, they look badass, especially with the dual axes that Taash uses. Like, I understand, like, axes aren't my favorite high fantasy weapon for warrior types, you know what I'm saying? But I do think that dual axes specifically, it looks sick, and you know, it looks sick, and it makes me really sad that dual wielding warriors are no longer a thing. Like, I loved that in Origins, but ever since that game, it just hasn't been an option for warriors, which I wouldn't mind if they had, you know, they saved it for rogues. I don't mind if they continue to do that, and especially less so because I just really don't play warriors myself. But come on, BioWare, Taash is right there and using these badass dual axes as a warrior. And us as a player character, if we play a warrior, we don't even get the option. We don't get that same weapon choice. That's cruel. You know, Tasha just rubbing that in our faces. Like, it's messed up. I hope I'm wrong, and you know, somehow, maybe some way, somehow, outside of what they've told us for pre-release, that dual wielding warriors are a thing later on in the game, and for some reason they just didn't show it in pre-release stuff, and that all the classes actually, that maybe they'll get more weapon options later on. I doubt that's going to be the case. That is extremely wishful thinking. Like, as a mage player myself, I'm happy that we got the dagger and orb combo. I'm mad happy about that, and I'm always down for more weapon options across all classes. But like I said, it's very wishful thinking, because if that was in the game, they probably would have led with it to drum up hype. But one last thing I want to say about Taash from this trailer is that besides looking cool, I just think the character looks great overall. Now, I suspect that I've become more impressed with Taash as of late because some of the other NPC Qunari and created character Qunari don't look as good as they do by comparison. Moving on, once Corius breaks out of the tower's depths and wrecks shop on a few wardens, we transition straight into combat. And I want to point out that, you know, the combat featuring minimal UI elements for this trailer was a nice touch. That was a good touch, BioWare. Except, you know, when the game was paused and the combat wheel was used, it looks like a lot of the UI elements, I think, you know, dang near all of them, were turned off for this trailer. And I hope that we as players are able to turn off just as many of the UI elements. I don't see any reason why they would show it to us, and it's not something that we can do, but still I hope nevertheless, right? Either to experience full-on sections or an entire playthrough as immersively as possible, or just to like record and share these really awesome set pieces, combat, exploration, or otherwise, with others. The fight starts off with the Mage BC jumping straight into action, followed by this really cool shot of Corius just obliterating the PC shield in one attack, showing just how much of a threat this dragon actually is. The combat is looking great as always, even more so, like I said, thanks to the UI kind of being tucked to the side a little bit, almost completely toggled off, so we can see everything that's on offer. The Mage here is played much more skillfully compared to gameplay from some of the other preview coverage we were shown, and overall I'm loving their mobility while still giving super spellcaster vibes in terms of presentation and effects of the spells, and overall the vibes of combat here for mages in this trailer and just Veilguard as a whole. I honestly feel like they successfully mimicked the look and feel of how mages fought in the animated series Dragon Age Absolution, and I love it. As I'm okay with mages sticking to the rear of the fight and just launching off spells from safety, from a distance in fantasy settings. I'm cool with that, but it doesn't mean that one, they can't look cool doing it with all of these flourishes and dope somatic components and effects, and two, that just because they can be in the rear doesn't mean that they have to, and that they can't have great mobility and defense thanks to their magic. I've always been a fan of speed, shield, and short distance teleportation magic. As the fight goes on though, I got the impression that while Veilguard will be a real-time with pause game combat wise, like previous Dragon Age games, with the exception of this one leaning more into action RPG territory, that Veilguard, unlike the other games, will be much more fluid, epic, and impactful if you want to go full-on unpaused combat after getting used to fighting within the system, right? You could go unpaused combat-wise throughout the entirety of all of the other previous DA games, and matter of fact, I actually did do just that on my first playthroughs of each of the games on normal difficulty back when they first came out, like when they first released each game. That's what I did, only really needing to pause and utilize the pause function on higher difficulties. Even for Origins, I never needed to pause back when I was much younger, right? But as you can see from the gameplay, this game right here lends itself much more nicely to doing so, while still offering the pause for intense moments and of course to strategize, right? And I hope that the combat is actually tough enough on those higher difficulties to warrant needing to pause a lot, to really make me feel like I gotta think carefully about my ability usage, target prioritization, and what builds to utilize for myself and companions if I want to make it through these these encounters alive. We'll see how it turns out once the game releases. For the other spells, they appeared to be using, the one that turns their basic attacks into these, like, I think draconic head projectiles. That one was really cool. I like that one a lot. And lastly, I think that the electrical ultimate that was used, I got the name further down, but can't remember right now. But yeah, the electrical ultimate they used, yeah, that one had plenty of size and oomph to it. It was definitely dope and worthy of that ultimate slot for sure. I think I'm going to have a really difficult time picking what spells I want my mage to have active at any given point. I definitely feel like it's going to be a tough choice. Now, after the fight, Corius calls for backup and his mama, leading to another blighted dragon and Ghilan'nain herself showing up. And yo, she is wicked. Like, she shows up teleporting from nowhere out of this festering pool of magic and just wrecks shop with her tentacles. And actually talking some more about, dark moments, when she shows up, she picks this warden up and lifts them in front of her using her 4 very long, very creepy arms. And the way the trailer is cut, it seems a bit unnatural. The editing for that shot seems a bit unnatural after she picked up the person. So I suspect, this is just a suspicion or theory, whatever, but to me, it seems like they didn't want to show it for the trailer, but in the full game, I bet that Ghilan'nain literally just pulls this person apart at the seams, right? Full on lower body just separated from upper body, and it's going to be gross, but definitely imposing and showing off just how brutal she can be. And I hope I'm right on this one, as I want our villains to feel like they have to be stopped at all costs, not because of what we hear them do, but because of the atrocities that they commit right in front of us, right before our eyes. It makes wanting to defeat them all the more personal, and their potential downfall all the more rewarding, as we feel like we rid the world of these truly awful beings. And I gotta say that the small voice line we got from her, I don't like it or hate it really. I just don't have any feelings one way or the other about her voice, and I just have to hear more of it to decide how I'm feeling overall. Next, Ghilan'nain summons several Darkspawn, and they just begin to eviscerate some of these wardens, tackling them, feasting on their guts through their armor. And you know what I'm saying? So like I said, we get to see a good amount of dark moments during these cutscenes, but I do like the snippet we get to see of the wardens in their element. They're fighting Darkspawn as if they're, it's their life mission. That's what they are for, and we get to see some of that. It's not much, but we do get an exchange as well of a warden taking out a Hurlock, and then several charging steadfast into a group of Darkspawn, right? Lastly, the trailer ends with a shot of Ghilan'nain seemingly healing Corius after our fight with them, in which we got the dragon, I think, to like a third of its HP. So all of that progress is ruined. I love to see that, of course, right? And the other red blighted dragon swoops in to join the fighting, and we see that more Darkspawn and wardens are clashing off in the background. So that's where that trailer ends. So everything regarded the blighted dragon gameplay trailer, I tried to keep it short, right? But that's all my opinions on it. I try to keep it short, but I get passionate about games, especially ones that interest me, so I could just go on and on when it comes to talking about them. My bad, y'all. But now I'm gonna go ahead and give my thoughts on this deep dive regarding the build the Mage PC in that trailer was using. So right out the gate, I'm actually pretty happy with the way gear works in this game. It seems like gear has a lot more impact this time around regarding how you are going to be approaching combat, whereas before, gear mostly only offered stat increases, and the various pieces of gear didn't have many unique passives or traits. At least, I mean, they did, but not ones that altered your playstyle all that much. Here we see that the dagger and orb combo this mage has comes with quite a few different passives, which make a substantial difference in their build, including things like more stacks for their debuff, more burning damage and duration, more crit damage, and crits themselves dealing, activating debuffs on the targets, while also giving the mage a way to get guaranteed crits with their arcane bomb. Just tons of synergy and stacking, and the helmet they chose further synergizes with all that by granting pretty big bonuses to this mage's debuffs all around. That's the kind of stuff that in previous games for Dragon Age would just be relegated to ability upgrades or just outright passive abilities you unlocked using skill points. But here in Veilguard, we have a substantial skill system while also having this robust itemization as well. I dig it. Also, we see that this PC is wearing transmogged equipment. I love it. Me personally, man, I think transmog should just be the standard in RPGs, in my opinion. Like, I love when games include it, and outside of developmental hurdles, I see no reason for them not to. The look into what skills this character has starts with showing us a few of their passives, and I like that they're called greater passives are actually very substantial in the skill tree. It's something I liked about the previous Dragon Age games, that they all did pretty well. Passives actually made a pretty big difference, and one of the greater passives here is called Inner Focus, and it seems really dope because as a mage, I just want to be constantly slinging spells all over the place, so a potential 50% bonus in mana generation is crazy. But as there were greater passives, so too are there just regular passives. The progression deep dive gave us a peek at one of them for the rogue that granted an extra 10% necrotic damage. To be honest, I find it sucks to get a level up and your only reward for doing so is something small, like a 5% bonus to critical damage or some other stat. Like I'm barely gonna notice that. In Veilguard's case, it seems like there's gonna be a good amount of synergy with passives and itemization though. So I imagine that these regular passives, they could still end up making an impact thanks to all of that and their synergy with other greater passives. But just from a super basic perspective, taking hours to level up to see that your reward again for doing so is some small 5 to 10% bonus doesn't feel the best as a player in the simplest terms of things, right? And you know, I'm of the camp that in RPGs, every level up should feel like you got something substantial out of it. But trying to be fair here, I know that in Veilguard, we're gonna have the highest level cap we've ever had. So of course they can't give something new that's mind-blowing every single level. I get that. In the past DA games though, there were always consumables you could get that would give you an extra skill point. So I imagine it's gonna be the same here in Veilguard, but I doubt that we're gonna get just an insane amount of those. So I'm not sure how much those are gonna help in this regard, right? You know, right? Plus, I mean, maybe certain quests could end up giving you extra skill points too. So we'll have to just wait and see how it all ends up, right? Next, we get a look at 2 skills from the Spellblade tree, which is definitely going to be the specialization I go with on my first playthrough, as I love the Arcane Knight / Spellblade / Gish archetype of spellcasters. Sword, magic, and tandem. I dig it. It just does something for me. I don't know what to tell you. But first up is the greater passive, which is called Electrical Burns, which is really damn cool. I also love debuffs, so being able to apply burning whenever you apply shocked to an enemy and vice versa is right up my alley. The second skill they show is actually the ultimate for the Spellblade, and it's called Thunderous End. That was a name from earlier. I couldn't remember it, but that's the name. It's Thunderous End, which summons a massive crow made of electricity and then sends it flying into an enemy, unleashing this really big electric AoE. And don't get me wrong, this is definitely a really cool ability, an ultimate, but it doesn't scream Spellblade to me. I don't know. I was expecting something that leaned more into the melee aspect or dagger aspect of being a Spellblade. Even something like potentially darting around the battlefield like lightning, you know, something that represents that blend of magic and melee that the narrator of this video mentions when describing Spellblade itself. Nevertheless, it's still cool, and I gotta see the entire skill tree and play the game myself before deciding how I feel about Spellblade overall. Like what skills I've seen of it, and the preview video little window that pops up when hovering over the specialization does get me hyped. They both get me hyped for the class, so hopefully I do end up actually really enjoying it. And lastly, for the build deep dive, we see a small section on synergy as well as combos. And yo, this was actually sick. That part was actually really sick. Like, we already knew detonations were a thing, so that's not new information for me. I'm still excited about the strategic opportunities that they offer, but what got me thinking that this section was really sick is the rune that was used right after the party dogpiled on the dragon with abilities while it was down. So me, I was expecting that the 3 ability combo with our companions that they showed off just then, I thought that was going to be the extent of burst that we could unleash on enemies as a party, right? I thought that was going to be the maximum that we could do. But then this mage uses their regroup rune, which instantly refreshes their companions' cooldowns so that they can unleash another 3 ability onslaught, ending it all with the ultimate. Chef's kiss, right? You know, that legit got me really excited to experiment with my build and hop into combat for this game, because like I said in previous videos, runes are substantial. They're gonna have these crazy effects that feel like full-on abilities all their own, right? Which you can use repeatedly because they're runes, you know, the runes themselves, they're on cooldown. They're not consumables. Runes, when combined with traits and ultimates, is gonna result in us feeling like we have way more than 3 abilities, which quells some of my initial worries that I had about the combat being too simple as a result of only having 3 hotbar abilities for our rook. Combat is gonna get busy, it's gonna get nuts, and I love to see it. So now that you have my thoughts and opinions on each section of the Blighted Dragon gameplay trailer, as well as the Mage build deep dive, overall, I gotta say both were very solid. I love how BioWare released this trailer, likely to showcase that the game can get dark and gritty, which is a worry for some fans, with many of them suspecting that the game may get too bright and silly in tone, plot, and moments. I loved how they flexed their combat this time around by toggling off some of the UI elements so that they could let it speak for itself, and giving us that extended look at exactly what went into this particular Mage's build. Yes, some people are going to be upset no matter what, that the game has kind of expanded on what they set out to accomplish with Inquisition and refine it in terms of combat, embracing an action RPG-esque system that is more of a mix between, I would say, an advanced Inquisition and Mass Effect, right? But those same people likely wouldn't be happy with anything except an Origins remake, so what can you do, right? Nevertheless, though, I hope they do get a chance to try Veilguard and that they end up liking it. Me, every time I see the combat and just the game in general, I end up getting more excited. I'm glad to see some dark moments and gloomy environments this time around, and Ghilan'nain is shaping up to be a villain that could correct one of Inquisition's weak spots by being a very imposing and threatening villain herself. Like 2 blighted dragons and a supremely powerful ancient elven mage that is essentially might as well be considered a god, all on the battlefield at once. Like, what the hell are we supposed to do? And how on earth do we manage to get out of this one? I gotta see how we manage to do it for myself, and this game cannot get here fast enough so I can figure it out. That's going to do it for this video. Be sure to let me know in the comments what your thoughts on the trailer and deep dive were, as I love discussing this game with you all. As always, I'll catch you on the next one. Y'all be easy.